Hello, my name is Matthew, and um, I'm having a read along in the month of April with Steve Donahue. We're both reading Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. Steve had talked about it in one of his earlier videos, and I reached out and said, "Do you want to read it?" And so for the month of April, we're reading about a quarter of the book each week. We'll make videos over the weekend, and so um, I read about 25% of the book. I'm reading it on my ebook. And the full title of the novel is Brideshead Revisited: The Sacred and Profane Memories of Captain Charles Ryder. And it's much more intriguing than just Brideshead Revisited. The book has had a difficult start for me. It's even hard to explain. It feels old fashioned and also modern at the same time. There's episodes and scenes that are just crystal clear, mixed in with confusion. I have been thinking about it all week, and it reminds me of that feeling of um, talking with someone or somebody telling you a story, someone that you are acquainted with but maybe don't know entirely well, and they're telling you a story about people in their life and not exactly making the connection that you don't know all of the people in their life. And so they might bring up family members or an old colleague or an ex-lover and not give you a full description or make it clear exactly what the relationship is. And so sometimes it can be a really good story, but you're kind of putting pieces together as it's going along, or having that thought of, well, who is this person? What are they doing? Where are they? And even the title, Brideshead Revisited, I'm about a quarter of the way through the book, and I know Brideshead is a location. I'm still not entirely sure if it's not also a person. If Brideshead Manor um, is also somebody named something Brideshead. And there's a lot of characters that come up that feel vague, but not underdeveloped. There will be these moments where you really feel like you understand somebody. So the it has this prologue, and it begins with Charles at the end of World War II. As a soldier, he's in the army, and again, I don't really know where his regiment is, where exactly they're stationed. I don't know what time of the war exactly this is taking place. Hitler's mentioned, so um, I, I know it's definitely World War II, but it's just hazy, and it has a slow start um, that feels incidental, not very interesting. There's a moment where Charles is in his regiment or whatever, and there's superiors, um, captains or generals or whoever, uh, whatever positions are in the army, and another soldier comes in, and the commanding officer berates that person for having long hair. The back of their head is long, and uh, admonishes this person, and finally, to make a point, has Charles come over with scissors. I think it's Charles, or maybe it was somebody else, uh, and snips the back of this person's hair. And so it's this little incident really early on in the book, and At first I thought, well, that's not very memorable or interesting. Uh, I also thought, like, how long would an army officer's hair be where you would be using scissors? I would think, like, clippers. If you're using scissors on the back of someone's head, it sounds like maybe it's too long. I don't know. Well, Charles meets this other character, Sebastian, who's wealthy, well-to-do, um, and they eventually spend time in Brideshead, and that's like the army scene at the beginning, and then it goes into the novel, the first chapter, and we are now um, in the past. Charles is having memories of his time in university at Oxford, at one of those um, colleges. I'm always confused how those colleges work out in Oxford. And he is young, uh, comes from a wealthy family. He has an allowance, and kind of meets up with um, other students that are a bad influence. He's partying, spending money frivolously, um, drinking during the day, getting drunk during the day. Um, there's one point where somebody chastises Charles and says, we're hearing that you're like drunk in the park in the university in the middle of the day, and has this kind of barrage of examples of you would imagine um, examples of really poor, bad, irresponsible behavior that would maybe might think to yourself, I need to um, start checking my priorities, get my life together, things like that. And instead, Charles just says, "Well, I like drinking. I like drinking during the day," and obstinately just bears his heels into his own bad behavior. And um, as it's going along, I'm thinking to myself, what's the story going on? We start off in the war. Um, I didn't really get a clear idea that some major thing happened. If it did, I just missed it. But now we have this sort of young, wealthy, loafing student. I kept thinking of Bosie, Oscar Wilde's lover. Um, as I was reading this, that sort of kind of decadent Englishman, the loafer. Um, but I was trying to think of what's the story going to be, the overarching plot. Um, and there's a lot of descriptions of drinking and driving, and there's characters that they're going off to, maybe they're going to Brideshead, but they're going to Sebastian's, some character, uh, Sebastian's mansion or manor, his family's manor, and he mentions that he's like a bad driver, and I'm curious to see, with sort of like today's sensibilities, like having all those things lined up, if one of the climactic or the climactic moment of the book is going to be a car accident. Again, I don't know, but um, it's hard to guess exactly what's going to be going on in this story. So Charles is living this kind of decadent, carefree lifestyle. He goes on a break, and we get back to him, and he's now run out of all of his money, and he's going to go back to his father's house. His father has been widowed. His wife has died. Charles's mother had died, and so he's going to spend time with his father. and it was really hard to sympathize with Charles, because he's kind of saying, well, how am I going to get more money? How am I going to be doing these things? I have my break, and um, just kind of befuddled, uh, totally doesn't understand what he's going to be doing. And like, to read it now and think, like, the fact that work isn't even like a possible option, just sort of like, how is someone else going to be giving me money for me to do the things that I want to do? But this is where the novel really put its hooks into me. Um, and at least one scene a series of scenes that are fabulous and funny. It's the interaction with Charles and his father. His father, we get the feeling, is a very wealthy man, and now Charles is just sort of like in the house. He should be off doing things, visiting friends, or out in the town, and uh, the father is sort of like shuffling around the house, wearing his smoking jacket. He has a library. He's reading his books, and there's these dinner scenes where the father's having his evening meal, and Charles is sitting there, and there's this great like back and forth play between the father, who seems maybe clueless or very aware of what's going on. So is he toying with his son? Is he just having his head in the clouds and being strange? So the son's like kind of dropping hints that he wants more money. The father's kind of ignoring him, but then the father is encouraging him to go out and do things. He'll say, you should go to the theater. And Charles goes, well, I don't have any money to go to the theater. How am I going to go to the theater if I don't have any money? And the father, like, listening to this, would just sort of go, huh, well, when I was your age, I didn't have to worry about money. And then moves on. At one point, he keeps bringing up Charles's cousin. At one point, Charles is like, well, like, I need to get some more money. And the father goes, you know what your cousin did? He traveled to Australia. And then doesn't really say much more. Like, well, how does that help me? What do you... And there's a whole series of these, like, interactions where the father is, like, kind of egging the son on. Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you go over there? Why don't you go out with your friends? And when he says that he doesn't have any money, the father goes, well, you have to live within your means. And finally, just one of the funniest, it was the moment where I laughed out loud. Maybe I can find, while I'm talking, maybe I can find it on this thing. Charles has a friend that lives like out of town somewhere, and he gets a letter from his friend, and it's his friend saying that he has been in an accident, and he's asking Charles to come right away. And Charles reads this letter and is in a panic, in a rush. He's in a hurry, and he wants to just fly out the door and come to the rescue of his friend. One of the things that's kind of vague is I can't tell if all the characters are gay or not. The students, I get the feeling that at least one person's gay, so I don't know if that's an underlying, like, a subtext going on or not, but there's like kind of homoerotic undertones. But he says to his father, Charles says to his father, like, I have to go, my friend has been injured. And the father just goes like, right, but he wrote the letter. How injured could he be? It's like, Well, I guess maybe if he was paralyzed from the waist down, like, I guess then he could write his letter if he's seriously injured. And then also says, but what are you gonna do? You're not a doctor. You can't help him. Why are you rushing off to see him? Is great. And then finally Charles just goes, well, I have to go. But we learned what this serious injury was. And so, and he tripped and like hurt his ankle, I think. And he goes, believe it or not, and how did this happen? He goes, believe it or not, playing croquet. He lost his temper and tripped over a hoop. Not a very honorable scar. So there's that's sort of where we leave off. Now Charles is visiting his friend. He's somewhere else. He's out of his father's house. We don't have a really good idea of if he's going to be getting more allowance, or if monetary money issues are going to play a part in this. The friend that he's visiting has I think it was a sister, so maybe there's going to be a love story that's going to unfold. I don't know if we're going to be spending more time on the battlefield or in war scenes. I don't know if we're going to have more university scenes. I really hope we have more scenes with Charles interacting with his father at the dinner table, because that so far has been the highlight of the book. But I'm not entirely won over by the book so far. There's been parts that have just felt really confusing, like I'm not being given all the information that I need to know what's really happened. Maybe there's a sentence of one detail, and if I was a sharper reader, I'd be picking up on things all over the place, like a modern poem or something. But then scenes like the father and Charles, where it's like watching a movie. I can just picture what they look like, what their clothes are wearing, that those tense, awkward moments just kind of fly off the page. It's absolutely meant to be funny, and it just swings it right out of the park, or hits it out of the park. Hit out of the park. And so I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I still don't know what kind of book I'm reading. So those are my thoughts on the book. Again, first time reader. I've never read anything by Evelyn Waugh. And I don't know anything at all about what the story is. So that's where I'm at. I will be very interested to hear Steve Donahue's thoughts. Of course, he's very familiar. I'm sure he's read the book countless times, but it'll be interesting to hear Steve's thoughts with fresh eyes, with a fresh reading. And also, if you've read the book, or if other booktubers maybe are making other videos, that'll be great to see. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. I hope by the end of the month I'll know how to pronounce his name. So thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.